Welcome back, Pirate Crew. It's your captain, Yeehaw Yadam, and we're back with another episode of 10-minute testing for the One Piece trading card game. In this series, we'll be showcasing a deck through competitive gameplay and analyzing its position in the upcoming meta. So get yourselves a drink and we'll get straight into the card by card. Alright, Pirate Crew, so for this week's 10-minute testing, or first of the 10-minute testings, we're going to be doing Ivankov. Now, Ivankov is a leader that is very polarized in the community, I would say. You either really think he's a good leader, or you think that the 2-card restriction of the hand is too limiting. For me, I think that style of gameplay that Emporio offers is very, very interesting and a little bit unique that only blue can really explore. So if you guys don't know what Ivankov does, it says at the end of your turn, if you have 0 cards in your hand, you will draw 2 cards. So if you go down to 0, which is not a great thing in One Piece, right? Because your hand is your board and your board is your hand. And for those who know, that's not a fantastic thing. You really can't sustain your board with 2 cards in hand or with 0. So it creates a mechanic that is really explored, right? So how do you get to 0? What do you do? Is that even good? Do you want to drop to 0? So on and so forth. So we have a lot of discarding mechanics that exist in Emporio that lets you facilitate this. And what it truly means is continuously draw 2 cards every turn, right? So if you do not have the answer now, what Emporio provides, at least to me, is that eventually you will get there, right? And the deck will try to tempo you out with their very powerful plays. Initially, when Whitebeard was showcased, a lot of people were polarized on him as well. The fact that you have to take a life every turn sounded like a huge drawback, but if you just think about it as I'm a red player and I'm drawing 2 cards a turn, you start to understand why decks are very, very powerful. So if you look at it on paper but see what it means in terms of the card game, things become a little bit different. So let's get to a quick card by card. We're playing for Alvida, mostly because of the 2k counter. She also, funnily enough, has found a home within Emporio Ivankov. Besides the fact that she is a buggy pirate and you're finally able to play a buggy in your deck, which is kind of cool and has legitimately no synergy, just kind of interesting. The fact that you have to trash a card from your hand to use her very whatever effect kind of becomes okay. Sometimes you just want to get cards out of your hand, and the fact that this card can unironically bounce back in Okiku is nothing to really scoff at. Most of the time she is used as a 2k counter or try to fight for early aggression, and honestly is a fantastic 2k counter. Your other option was Mr. Boncre, but the fact that you're not playing any sort of Desert Spada or any card to really facilitate his game plan makes it so that Alvida is just the clear choice. I'm playing 2 Dracul Mihawk. Unfortunately enough, blue still has the blue issue of not having high stats. Mihawk is a fantastic card that outs a lot of potential threats in the board. The fact that 7-cost kit has become increasingly popular is really good for Mihawk, and that effect to bottom deck is one of the best removals in the game. The only really bad part about Mihawk is the fact that if you draw him, he gets stuck in your hand most of the time, but with cards like Alvida and other discard effects, you can remove him from your hand or you can put him to the bottom of the deck if it's not necessary in this matchup. A very important card that has really just shown how strong it is in this specific meta is Don Quixote do Flamingo. It has found a home in every blue deck that I have seen. The fact that you can go ahead and see the top of your deck while being a 4k blocker, which is just outside of Whitebeard's territory to destroy, is fantastic. Not only that, the card is a 1k counter and can become an attacker with just 1 Dawn. An overall fantastic card, and the alt art is probably one of my favorite cards in the entire game. Mixing that up with 4 more Perona for the same idea, fights for early aggression, lets you plan out your turns, because this deck's game plan is very, very simple, and we'll get to it when we are there. We're playing 4 of the Inazuma, mostly because I believe that their ability is very, very powerful. You also have a very difficult aggressive matchup. A lot of people think that Ivankov handles aggro very, very well, and it's somewhat true. You have a lot of blockers, you have a lot of cheap, you have a lot of 2Ks, and you have a lot of cheap cards that fight for board. The issue is, this is a blocker that is impel-down, so it's searchable by your archetype specific searcher, as well as it can be summoned by your other cards. The fact that if you have 1 or less cards in hand and it gains 2 power is really, really tricky and trips up people more often than not. If you declare a block with 2 cards in hand and you pitch a card, it will immediately gain the 2k, allowing for very interesting blocks and Dawn values that most people are unaware of. Very surprising factor, offensive and defensive card. Then we have the bread and butter of the deck, Emporio himself. Emporio states that you, on play, draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. So if this is like the last card in your hand and you play him, you will draw a fresh grip of 3 cards. And then once you have done that, play 1 blue impel-down type character with a cost of 6 or less. Obviously 6 or less, so you're not able to Emporio the Emporio because my goodness, that would be ridiculous. But the ideal targets are cards like this Crocodile being a 7k, so summoning 2 7s for the cost of 1. Buy one, get one free, if you will. But more importantly, we have the Monkey D. Luffy from the Impel-Down series. This card synergizes perfectly with the Ivankov because the Ivankov is the last card in your hand. You play it, you draw 3, you summon the Luffy, you have 2 left in hand, you pitch the last 2, and now you're down to 0, which has completely turned on your leader's ability that will let you now facilitate your draws. If you couple that up with a lot of stacking effect and some big brain, you can start stacking 2Ks to your hand to become defensive and then use this Luffy in a very offensive manner. Not only does this card have an on play, it has a when attacking, that when you trash those 2 cards from your hand, this card currently gains double attack. A card that truly facilitates a very easy way to finish some games. The main objective of this deck is getting your opponent down to 2 life, have a Luffy on board, shove a ton of cards under that, well, when I say cards, I mean Dawn under that Luffy, making it a very difficult block for your opponent that says, I am threatening to win the game this turn, or you are comboing out. If you've played in a very aggressive fashion, it's very difficult that your opponent is able to do this, and oftentimes this deck can fight for board, but it can also fight for life very, very easily. So the Crocodile, once again, here for as an Ivankov target, Buggy as your archetype searcher, Monkey D. Luffy as your ideal Ivankov co-pilot. And then we've got some archetype specific 2K in the name of Mr. 2, which is Bon Clay from the Impel-Down arc saga. This card is quite interesting. Most of the time it is a 2K, but it is a 5/5, which is not fantastic stats, as Mihawk is a 4/5, and its effect leaves a little bit of something to be desired. Dawn times 1, so you're attacking for 6, not an ideal number. You may trash 1 card from your hand, again, not ideal, but in this deck, it's kind of okay. And then return 1 character from a cost of 2 or less to the bottom of its owner's deck, then return this card to the bottom of your deck. So you're not netting any advantage. It's honestly a -2, and you're doing it for a 2-costed character. If there was some sort of cost reduction in this deck, maybe you can argue that Bon Clay is a summonable card, but oftentimes you're never summoning him. You only summon him as a last resort off the Imperio Ivankov just so that you can get some sort of value if necessary. Lastly, we have another 4 of a blocker from the set, Mr. 3. This blocker is absolutely stunning. It is a 4 for 5 blocker. At the end of your turn, trash a card from your hand and set this card as active. It is defense, it is offense, it is Miss United States. We have 4 of the Dracula Mihawk as just a 2K of my choice. Honestly, could be anything else, but Mihawk facilitates the deck's game plan with drawing and trashing, cycling to your very important turns. We've got 2 Gum Gum Grain that allows us to remove cards from our hands such as New Kamaland or Draco Mihawk to get to our 0 if necessary and turn dead cards like this Luffy or Ivankov into counter power. And then we have New Kamaland, which is the stage for Imperio, which says you may rest this card, draw a card, then trash up to 3 cards from your hand, which lets you get to that, again, 0 card threshold. The main idea of the deck is to go Imperio Monkey, Imperio Monkey, Imperio Monkey until my opponent is out of resources and the tempo is fully on my side. The deck tries to summon a board of 5/7 attack characters and then use the Dawn in an efficient manner to finish off the game within the course of 2 to 3 turns. So with that, let's get right into the games. Alright guys, so for our first game, we're going to be here with the big bad boss of the format in terms of Zoro. We have a pretty solid start. So we go in going first, which is exactly what we want. We start with New Kamaland. Now pitching a 2K there doesn't feel great, but we really do need to cycle to our very strong cards in our deck. We will go Perona. None of these cards are really going to win us the game. We aren't going to get anything out of it, but we do go ahead and tap the New Kamaland. We're just aggressively tapping here. Now we'll go ahead and play the Buggy. Buggy's going to grab us a Luffy. So at least we have one of the pieces of our puzzle, but we still are missing our Ivankov, right? Like I said, this deck needs to do 7 into a 6 of some sort consistently in order to push what the deck really wants to do. So we're stuck again. So what we go ahead and do here, we'll go ahead and try to clear this Khalid Dawn, pitching as many cards from our hand as physically possible. And then we'll go ahead and play out this blocker, right? We have 1 Dawn. It could have been a Crocodile turn, or we could have played the 5-drop 7K, but I do believe that a blocker that's situationally a 7K might just come in handy a little bit more. So he goes ahead and attacks me. I don't really have the combo power to beat the attack, so I go ahead and take this one. I'll go ahead and defend this. He'll go 7. I'll go ahead and defend this, and I'll go and use the ability. And then right there we go. You just have to believe. And you can achieve. So we'll go ahead and try to clear this board as best as we can. And then, like, yes, he's using cards from OPO3 like this Buggy, which doesn't get KO'd there because he cannot be KO'd by slash characters. And then I go ahead and do the Ivankov Luffy shenanigans, and I bounce the new Whitebeard one drop to go ahead and push that to the hand, because that card just can come and hit me for 5k for 0 Dawn investment. So this is just showing off what it can do versus red. Yeah, this is not an OPO2 red list, but you know, it is red nonetheless. And I'm going to go ahead and defend all my cards, get to 0. I'm finally at 0 cards, Pog Champ. I'm going to go ahead and draw. I see that I, picked up another Ivankov, and we're gaming. This is what I'm talking about. This is how you have to kind of play the deck. Play it with the top of the deck and hopefully get what you need, right? If you don't, I would have just played a Crocodile there, but I was able to hit another Ivankov character card, which let me just go and do the craziest shenanigans. Now my board is literally a bunch of 7-drops. Sure, I have no cards in hand, but I'm very okay with having 4 7Ks on the board, and now I have my turn with 10 Dawn. So easy clear here. I go ahead and play the new Kama land. I find the buggy. I'm gonna go ahead and just attack him for 7s all day. No Dawn investment. Then I'm just gonna go ahead and play this Ivankov. And Ivankov is I'm gonna not trigger its effect, and I'll even float 2 Dawn here, because there's no physical way for me to go to 0, so I'll just do that, no problem. And now I'm gonna have literally a board of all 7Ks. I chose to not attack with the Luffy because making that Luffy unable to be knocked out for a turn is going to be really, really cool, because it can just pressure game by itself. He's going to go ahead and Otama Jet Pistol in a way the card, but it's 3 cards for 1, because that's a very weird Jet Pistol. And again, I'm just going to attack for bases against him. No reason to have any Dawn investment. He has 1 card in hand, and now I'm just going to go ahead and play Doflamingo. Stack the top of my deck however I choose, and then I'm going to go ahead and play Ivankov. Ivankov's going to let me draw the Crocodile, and I'm going to play another 7-drop, and I have a 2k, 1k, and it's just over at this point. There's no way that anything can happen that I would lose that game. Now, this is now versus Kinemon, right? So, historically, a bad matchup. Blue versus green is blue's kryptonite, and again, I'm going to need a very strong curve. So, the best card in my hand at this point in time is Mihawk. And yeah, that doesn't come down to like turn 4, so I have to go ahead and hedge this really poopy early game. I'm gonna go ahead and attack this Jewelry Bonnie, and then I'm actually gonna unironically summon this Alvida. I don't think it's probably like the 3rd time I've ever summoned this card in my life, but it's gonna actually prove to be really good here. So he's gonna go ahead and attack me, and again, the whole point of my deck is to defend aggressively and go to 0. So if you're attacking me, I'm super down, and he plays the Raizo that he just searched off the Momo. So yeah, this is going to get a little funny. I'm deciding what I really want to do here, and I'm like, maybe this Alvida can actually swing. So I'll have Alvida go at the Momo. I'll go ahead and pitch a 2k, which is not great, but this 2k isn't going to get summoned anytime soon. And the cards in my hand are just, it could have been the Mihawk, to be honest, but I'd rather summon Mihawk than I'd rather summon Mr. Bon Clay. So I'll go ahead and slam jam the blocker. I do think this card is going to have to get me some value. And he goes and attacks the Alvida. And I think to myself, well, is there some point to defending this? And there honestly might be, depending on how he plays his turn. So he's going to go ahead and play Basil Hawkins, which is surely a card of the past. Definitely, I haven't seen it in a lot of Kinemon decks, and I was very surprised to see it in this scenario, but I'll take what I can get. I'm going to go ahead and swing with Leader, swing with the Blocker, the Mr. 3. A lot of lists don't really play this guy, but he's super duper cool. He's going to go ahead and beta block here. I'm going to play the Ivankov, which is going to go ahead and summon the Mr. 2, and then I'm going to go activate a Mr. 3's effect at the end of the turn and pitch a Don Quixote to get 1 card left in hand. Now, I know my next turn must certainly be a Mihawk summon, and then we'll go ahead and see where we go from there. I'm going to take this hit because I have really nothing to do. Unfortunately, I do get another Ivankov, unfortunately, right? And I'm thinking to myself, well, there is a scenario where I can just go play New Kama Land. New Kama Land can go ahead, tap, pitch the cards in my hand, and then just summon Ivankov Leader. And then by doing so, I can go ahead and cycle some cards, but I kind of want to save that for later, as I'm going to go pretty aggressive here. And this is going to force the Odin to come into my board. By coming into my board, I'm going to have a way to refuel it on the crackback. So I think this Ivankov is going to have to do that. So I'll go ahead and use the action and then pitch the New Kama Land, which is not exactly what we want to do, because that card is fantastic. Once you have it on the field, you can really dig through your deck and create the scenario where your leader starts drawing 2 cards at the end of each of your turns. But we're not in a bad spot at by any means. We didn't have a perfect 1-3-5, but we surely had a nice 7-9, and hopefully that'll carry us for the rest of the game. My opponent does have an Odin, which is terrifying. It is not an easy card to face down by any means, but let's see what we can do. So he's going to go ahead and summon a Jewelry Bonnie. I think at this point, in this game, I even get a little disrespectful, if I'm being honest. So he goes ahead and Bonnie's for, I believe, in Apu at this point in time. So there is a 2k that we're aware of. He goes ahead and Straw Swords our Mihawk, which is not great, as we have a 0 counter in our hand. Then he plays Izo on our blocker, and Mihawk is not long for this world. unfortunately. So he's going to go Kinemon at Mr. 2. I'm going to go ahead and let that go. I can't, by let that go, I mean forced. And then it goes back to my opponent's turn. He has 4 Dawn available. He's going to go ahead and attach 1 here. And there was no, like, 1 was perfect there because even if I had a 1K in hand, I pitch it, he restands, and he clears it. But that would leave me with a blocker. This is a little bit less fortunate for me because now I get no blocker, or he develops another card. And I think that's what he's thinking about here. Does he develop a card for 3 more Dawn, like a killer, veggies? He chooses not to. He just removes the card, which I agree. It's very, very solid. I'm going to just have the Alvida clear the Bonnie. I'm going to go ahead and play another Ivankov. This would be the second in the series of many Ivankovs that need to be summoned in order to win this game. That's just how absolutely powerful Odin is. And I'm not going to be able to summon the Inazuma. So again, my win condition is just to hit him over and over and over for 7s. And hopefully there comes a point where he just can't handle that pressure, right? Because I'm not beating an Odin that has been summoned on the board. I have to just erase him. I'll go ahead and summon a Buggy. Buggy's going to go find me another Ivankov. Because that's my win condition. Even though I bottom deck a Luffy, I need to just continuously summon 2 bodies for the price of 1. So he's going to go in Izu into my Alvida, and I do not care. Alvida has done way more than I thought she would. And then it goes, and let's see what he does with the rest of his turn. He is at 0 life, but he is also extremely low on cards in hand. He's going to go 9 at my 7. I let it go. Still have 4 life, so I have some time to work this, right? But Odin being on the board, it doesn't give me an insane amount of time. It really kind of like gives me 3 turns at max in order to close out this game. So goes ahead and plays a Momo. Momo's gonna just come down again. It works as like a pseudo blocker, but fortunately I do have this Buggy on the board that is just going to be able to clear it without any investment. Then he's going to go ahead and I think he found another Izo, so I'm aware of 2 2Ks in his hand. His hand is very 2K heavy, but like I said many times and on the stream, Green's hands, even though they're pretty large sometimes, it's mostly air. At least I believe, even though he has what seems to be like a 9 to 10 card hand, I haven't really counted it. I'm assuming that 1/3 to 1/3 of it to be just fake cards, and unfortunately I draw another Ivankov here, right? So this is where new Kamaland would be absolutely stunning, because honestly I haven't been able to trigger my leader's effect. My leader has been a flat out vanilla this entire game. I'm gonna go ahead and go 8 because there's just no point in doing anything else at this point in time. I want to get 2 of the 2Ks out of his hand right now. Let's see if he's able to give them to me. And he says, sure. Now he's down to 5 cards. I'm going to go 7. Give me another 2 cards out of your hand, or block, or whatever you so choose to do. But yeah, there is 2 ways to play this turn. By the way that I attached 3 Dawn to my leader certainly means that I'm Ivankoving, which is not a bad, not a bad play by any means. It's going to go ahead and summon, another 2 cards. So he goes ahead and defends again with 2 cards. I'm going to go ahead and Ivankov and pass, summon another blocker. So he's down to 4 cards in hand. Probably 2 of them just have no counter, and 2 of them do. So the big issue here now that I'm staring with are these blockers. Had Emporio summoned a Luffy at any point in time during this game, I think the game would be vastly different. I'd be able to have the pressure to just finish off the game whenever I wanted to, but unfortunately, we are where we are. So let's see where we go from here. He's going to go ahead and attach a lot of Dawn. I'm just going to counter out of it, block him as much as I could, and just kind of stall for another turn. So from my opponent's perspective, it probably looks really unfortunate that I've summoned 3 Ivankovs on him. I mean, I have bottom decked a couple times and searched at least twice, but certainly it gets a little frustrating after a couple of the Ivankovs. So I'm going to go take these free blocks while I still can. I still have a full board, although the Buggy is not a real card, but I do have a full board. Yeah, me hovering over this Buggy. There's no way I can invest 10 Dawn into it, right? So he's going to go ahead and do some clearing with Odin, and that's kind of like what he has to do because he can't finish the game off this turn no matter what he does. So he goes ahead and removes a blocker plus a threat, and I draw another card that's just super unfortunate. And then I do like a really weird play this turn, right? Because he has 2 Dawn up, and I'm trying to play around the Punk Gibson. But if I do get Punk Gibson, then it's unfortunate because it would have the Inazuma anyway. So I'm pretty sure this is like a really big misplay turn. The fact that he does Paradise Waterfall is good for me. So again, now I'm just going to go bases against on him. I'm just going to go 7 at 5. And then I can't afford to swing. He goes ahead and blocks. I summon a Crocodile, and I'm able to have 2 cards in hand. So having the Gum Gum Rain was unfortunate for that turn, but it's going to be really good in terms of defense. Now my opponent has 4 cards in hand. Again, he's been just countering with the top cards of his deck, so I'm pretty sure that at some point in time he's going to have to get punished for that. So he's going to go ahead and play Yamato, and by playing Yamato, he has invested 4 Dawn in trying to finish off the game, but that's a very hefty cost, right? Because you're going to have to pay 4 for Yamato, 3 for your Odin, and then you're going to be left with only 3 Dawn to work with to deal 4 points of damage, which I do not believe is possible because the highest the Ezo can go is 7, and I have a Gum Rain in my pocket. So he's going to go ahead and put 2 Dawn under the Kinemon, and I'm not really stressed in terms of losing this game now. I will just let him hit me all the way down to 0 if he so chooses, and if he commits to go on the Ezo, I'll just counter it out of it pretty easily. So he's decided to go for a more offensive approach. I'm going to go ahead and counter there. A 1k would be sufficient because of the ability of Inazuma. So I'll go ahead and pitch a card there because the more cards I can keep on board, the easier it is to finish this game. He's going to go 3 on 2. Yeah, you got it, boss. Buggy's gone. Buggy down. And then he still has 4 down to work with. He's going to have to go ahead and pay 3 for the Odin. He has decided anywhere the Odin goes, it's going to go ahead and destroy the card. Sure. And then I have 2 7Ks or so to work with and 1 card left in hand with 1 blocker. So I just have to make sure that he can't block any single attack. So I'm just going to go 9s. I don't believe that he can block any 9s again, signaling that the last card in his hand is probably fake. And then for our last match, I'm going to talk here about the mirror. So as you can see, again, I'm trying to play the strongest cards that I can on curve. It hasn't really worked out great for me, but that game was just, maybe I took it a little too BM by going 4 Emporios on him and just, prolonging the inevitable. So I go first, I whiff on a play here. I go ahead and attack. I could have summoned the Alvida to pressure the Buggy, but if he wants to attach 3 Dawn into the Buggy, he's more than welcome to do so. I'll go ahead and swing at him for 7, and he'll counter out for 8 because of the Gum Rain. I mean, surely I could have attached 1 more Dawn, but sure. I'm going to go ahead and defend here again. I'm going to go to 5 next turn, and my plays are looking like Inazuma pass. He goes Mr. 3, and then he goes end step, doesn't use Mr. 3's effect. So I'm going to go ahead and attach 1, hit for 6. I know that the Emporio deck plays a lot of 2Ks, and I might as well just grab them while I still can. Play in my 4-drop here because my turn is pretty telegraphed. I don't really have any crazy curve. Like, there's something to be said about summoning a Mihawk there and just kind of cycling, but I opted to go for the more conservative play. I'm going to go ahead and defend and go lower and lower in hand size because I guess that's what I must do. And it's going to go, and he's going to hit me and play another Mr. 3. I think he's deciding if he wants to swing with the Mr. 3 or not. He chooses not to. Goes back to my turn, and I'm definitely going to hit for another 6. Yeah, and I'm just basically playing off curve. All of my plays have been on evens, and I started on odds, which is statistically better for me, I think, but sometimes unlucky, right? So he'll defend with another 2k. I will deploy a Luffy, and I will pass. Now, Luffy is one of the god cards of the matchup because it is unaffected by my opponent's Emporio until they have access to a Mihawk, and the fact that I'm on odds and I get to Mihawk first is already a winning position for me. So he goes ahead and swings at me for 7. I thought he swung for 6, and I pitched a 2k for fun, I guess, which was a huge little blunder, but I guess it do be what it be. I'll go ahead and pitch a 1. I'll pitch a 2. He'll play a Don Quixote. Go ahead and stack the top of his deck. He could swing with the Mr. 3. I defend it with my Inazuma, and then he just double restands and pitches his 2 cards and then recycles his 2 cards with the top of his deck because of the Don Quixote blocker. Opts not to do that, which is absolutely fine. I'm going to go 5 at the Buggy. I'm going to try to clear as many cards as I physically can. 7 at 5 with 2 cards in hand, sure. And then I'm going to go ahead and Mihawk the other Mr. 3. So those cards that were very powerful and very threatening / defensive are now dealt with. But I do give my opponent a turn to be at 10 Dawn, which could be an Emporio turn. It could be so many things. So let's see how my opponent decides to navigate this. He's going to go ahead and attach a lot of Dawn and goes face, which is bizarre. They'll go ahead and play their own Emporio using all of their Dawn. Emporio's going to draw them a card, and then does it summon anything? I guess not, and that's really, really bad for my opponent because if you stack the top of your deck, you should have at least put a card there that you could play, and maybe it was just a misclick. I don't know. Stuff to say. Classic simulator shenanigans. So I'm just going to hit him for 9 twice. Going to use the effect to bounce the Flamingo just to, again, add more cards to my opponent's hand. So keep them away from what they want to do. And if he does take this, it's going to be really bad for them because even though, yes, their hand looks massive, it's not going to be able to do what it wants to do. I'm going to go 9 again. I'm just going to play out my entire hand. Just hit him as hard as I can this turn. He's probably going to take this one as well. He's pitched at least 4 or 5 2Ks at this point. 9 again. And there you go. He just pitches half of his hand just to like counter or defend some of these moves. It looks like maybe the last 3 cards in his hand are just really, really heavy since he Emporio'd and couldn't do anything. So I'll go ahead and summon a Mr. 3, use the Emporio's effect at the end step to draw another 2 cards, and finally our leader is just not a vanilla PogChamp. Now that our leader is in this mode, we can just continuously every single turn just go down to 0 and just draw 2, draw 2, draw 2, which is going to be really nice. So my opponent goes ahead and 5s me, and yes, I wanted to keep this Perona for, you know, so I can look at the top of my deck, but I just can't afford to take damage in this scenario. I am the aggressor, and that was just too easy of a block. So he's going to go ahead and attach a bunch of Dawn to the Emporio. He's going to go 10 at 9. I will just block with Mr. 3. Even though Mr. 3 is really solid in this point in the game, I think that the Inazuma being able to be a 7k is just a little bit more valuable. It's going to re-summon the Flamingo blocker, which only lets him get to see 1 or 2 more cards than he previously was unaware of, and then he's going to go Inazuma, pass. So I do get a Buggy here off the top, which is really, really nice. Buggy, I'm looking for specifically an Emporio character card. So I'm going to go ahead and use 3 Dawn here. I'm going to go 9 at the 7. You can go ahead and defend with the cards in hand or block on board. This is just a really good swing for me, because if I can remove their biggest threat on the board, then we're certainly in a good spot. I'm going to go 9 at it again. So most probably eat a blocker of some sort with just 1 card in hand. He chooses to let it go, which is bizarre. And I do I mistakenly counted my Dawn this turn, right? Because I was thinking to myself, well, if I draw Emporio, then I would be at 7. And then since I put 2 on Luffy and I tapped for 1, that is unfortunately not enough. So I have the Emporio in hand, but I will be able to Emporio for 0 on the following turn, meaning that this turn is going to be exceptionally weak for me. And I'm going to pass it back to my opponent, leaving 2 Dawn up to pretend like I have a Love Beam. But yeah, I think I just miscounted my Dawn there. I know I was trying to leave myself at 7 and, you know, new Kamaland, see if I can get to the Ivankov, because, you know, I did, and I got immediately punished. My opponent goes and swings at me for 5, and I will take the free block here. If they want to go in and commit to my board, I don't really mind because I have a refueler in hand. But let's see if they go ahead and fully commit to it. He still has a lot of Dawn to work with, and again, just by the way that they've been playing, they've got a ton of like bricked up cards in the last couple cards in their hand. There's really few ways to remove it. So he's going to go ahead and play Luffy. Luffy's going to bounce my Inazuma, and then he's going to start his engine as well. So I'm going to go base Luffy swing. No point in using his effect as opposed to just bouncing a blocker. Like the double strike doesn't really matter. It's just an added bonus. And we'll see how they react to this. I needed to do this effect first to see if I can bait out, you know, something there. I can go Emporio here is like a really solid turn, which is, again, this is a mistake. This just shows my inability to look, you know, to play the deck. But if had I Emporio'd here and Emporio, you know, drew a Luffy, then I can use Luffy's effect off of the top 2 cards I draw, pitch, bounce the Don Quixote, then
And
go
we're
8,
back.
then go 9.
So Ivankov, thoughts, questions, concerns? Well, firstly, I think the deck is really, really cool. In the hands of a very skilled player with a ideal opener, this is one of the only decks that wants to go first in this going second meta. With powerful turns like Perona into or a Flamingo into a Crocodile to an Emporio to a Mihawk, it has a fantastic 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Its 7 is the strongest 7 in the game. Nothing contests summoning 2 7 costed characters for the price of 1, while also gaining tempo on your side and potentially a double striker. Not many cards can out these, and then if they go ahead and play something to attempt to defend versus this, because they're going to be on 8 Dawn, Mihawk should come down and deal with it immediately. More of my games, the more games that you win is the games that you start seeing this Imperial in multiples, but this is obviously facilitated by cards like Buggy the Pirate, Don Quixote do Flamingo, Perona, and New Kamaland will constantly searching to get to what you need in this deck. You have to be very aggressive, and oftentimes you have to play to your out, which is something that's not very easy to do and will show mastery over the deck over many, many games. This is a deck that you might not see success with immediately, and then so therefore people are not piloting. It is a deck that handles control decks very well. It can handle aggro sometimes, but it's obviously a deck that has to be piloted very, very well. And a lot of things do need to go correctly. In a 9-round tournament, it does become difficult to consistently go Emporio. So I can understand where that happens. If you've watched any of the streamed games that happened this Sunday, I think we had an Emporio on stream twice. And unfortunately, they were only able to cast this once during that game. If they were able to cast it at least once more, both of those games were certainly in the Ivankov's hands. But personally, I think it's a very cool deck, very different than Don Quixote do Flamengo, and obviously very different from Crocodile. Definitely something to be explored, nothing to be scoffed at, and can easily take some events, and I wouldn't be surprised if it topped in the near future. So give it a go. The list is obviously a very standardized, heavy impel-down list, but honestly, you can make it your own with, different techs that you may have. So if you guys like this type of video, make sure to leave a like down below. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or ways that you can help me improve this deck, because this is a deck that I do want to take to locals in the near future, leave a comment section down below. All you Emporio one tricks, let me know what you're doing and how your success has been with this deck. And as always, guys, if you are not subscribed and are enjoying the content and want to join the Pirate Crew, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.